In a luxurious restaurant, Sylvia, a resilient waitress, faces humiliating taunts from billionaire Eric, igniting a spark for revenge that pushes her to unfathomable depths of ingenuity. The opulence surrounding her feels suffocating, a constant reminder of the chasm between their worlds. As she clenches her jaw, the burning question lingers in her mind. What happens when the humble serve the arrogant? With each mocking word from Eric, her resolve strengthens, hinting at the unexpected lengths she'll go to reclaim her dignity. The evening shimmered in the opulent downtown restaurant, where silk tablecloths draped elegantly over polished wood and crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the patrons. Sylvia darted between the tables, her footsteps light yet invisible, against the symphony of clinking glasses and soft laughter. To most, she was just another waitress, dressed in her humble black uniform, but within her clever mind brewed sharp retorts, each one a well-honed blade concealed beneath a veneer of professionalism. As she approached a table adorned with extravagant dishes, her heart sank when her gaze fell upon Eric, the billionaire notorious for his arrogance. Leaning back in his chair, his demeanor radiated a sense of entitlement that made her insides churn. It happened in seconds. A minor mix-up with his order ignited a flashpoint. "Do you even know how to do your job?" he snapped, his voice dripping with disdain, eyes narrowed like a hawk spotting its prey. The restaurant fell silent, the air thickening with unspoken tension. Sylvia's cheeks burned, humiliation washing over her in waves. His scorn felt like a spotlight, drawing attention to her weakness. Yet, underneath the flush of her embarrassment, a bitter resentment simmered, sharp and potent. What gave him the right, she thought, her pulse quickening. The anger manifested as a moment of clarity, a recognition of the societal injustices glaring back at her. The condescension stung not only for her, but also for every individual cast aside in the shadow of privilege. She gripped the order pad tighter, her nails pressing into the paper as her thoughts whirled. Flashes of her life flickered through her mind. Long hours spent balancing tables, the fatigue etched into her bones, haunting memories of waking before dawn to assist her mother with household chores before heading to the restaurant. This wasn't just about personal humiliation. It illuminated the widening gap between the lives of hard-working individuals and the lavish existence of the elite. Sylvia resolved to transform her anger into something powerful, compelling her to reclaim her dignity. The thought of plotting revenge ignited a fire within her that felt both exhilarating and daunting. As her shift wound down, Sylvia sat with Mia, another waitress, in the small break room. The two shared their burdens, a camaraderie forged through late-night shifts, and the struggles of service work. "Did you see how he acted?" Mia said, shaking her head, frustration leaking into her tone. "It's like we're invisible to them. He thinks he can treat people any way he wants," Sylvia replied, her voice low but fierce. Each word strengthened her resolve, reminding her of the precipice upon which she stood. Shadows crept inside her mind as she realized that the fight wasn't solely hers. It was a collective struggle against the arrogance they encountered daily. The atmosphere shifted once more as Sylvia contemplated the idea of delving deeper into Eric's life. What secrets lay behind those designer suits and carefree laughter? A determination surged through her. She couldn't allow his arrogance to slide without challenge. She would uncover the truth behind that lavish facade, peeling back the layers until the ugly truth beneath was laid bare. Just then, a nearby table captured her attention. The conversation of customers drifted toward her. Their hushed tones painted a picture of Eric's questionable business ethics. Words like manipulation and exploitation hung heavy in the air. Sylvia's heart raced as eagerness mingled with intrigue, solidifying her resolve to expose him. What secrets might Eric be hiding beneath his arrogant facade? She pondered, the unanswered question echoing in her mind. Just as she thought she had a handle on her emotions, another layer unfolded, pulling her deeper into the web of vengeance she was beginning to weave. As Sylvia settled into her routine at the restaurant, She understood that her true mission reached far beyond serving tables. Two unlikely allies, one shared goal. To topple the tyrant, she whispered to herself, the words fueling her determination. Each passing shift turned into an opportunity for observation, a careful gathering of information about Eric's opulent lifestyle. He was a regular presence, arrogant billionaire, effortlessly bending the world around him to his will. Watching him from the shadows, Sylvia felt like a ghost in his empire, an unseen specter ready to disrupt his facade. Over the next few weeks, her interactions with patrons transformed into a living archive of Eric's flawed character, from casual conversations over coffee to heartfelt confessions about financial struggles. Every story connected the dots of Eric's unscrupulous business ventures. One evening, a weary businesswoman divulged, "I lost my store because of Eric's shady dealings. He doesn't care who he steps on as long as he profits." The bitterness in her voice resonated with Sylvia, a painful reflection of the chaos Eric left behind. Is he really that ruthless? Sylvia questioned herself, feeling a swell of determination mixed with vulnerability. Echoes of her own struggles danced in her mind, reminding her of her mother's words, "Strength comes from understanding your worth." A sense of urgency washed over her as she thought about the monstrous shadow of power looming in Eric's world. Each piece of information she gathered only sharpened her resolve to seek a reckoning. "Let's dig deeper," Sylvia said to Mia one afternoon between serving customers. Mia, her confidant, had become a vital ally in this undertaking. "What do you know about Eric's past?" Sylvia leaned in, hoping for insights that would add depth to her covert investigation. Mia's eyes narrowed as she recalled her own encounters with Eric. "He thrives on being unchallenged, like his invincible. I've seen him belittle employees, ruin lives without batting an eye. It's sickening." The fire behind her words ignited a shared understanding between them, a bond born from their respective battles against structured inequality, motivated by a surged inequality of sisterhood. Sylvia spent her nights researching Eric's empire in silence while the world rested. With every article and every whispered story, she unearthed the depths of his shallow morality. "He uses his wealth to manipulate the powerless," she noted in a hidden notebook, each line documenting her revelations. The disdain she felt for Eric deepened, a churn of anger compelling her toward revenge. Then, in the soft glow of her desk lamp, Sylvia stumbled upon something explosive, an article buried in a news archive, detailing a scandal involving Eric's company. Could this be the evidence I need? Her heart raced as she scanned the words, each line confirming what her instincts had already uncovered. It detailed his unethical practices, painting a picture of a man who put profit over people at every turn. "Unbelievable," she muttered, throwing her hands up in disbelief. The information crackled with potential, her plan knitting itself tighter as cell. The pieces fell into place. For the first time, she felt the intoxicating pulse of power surge through her veins. As the day came to a close, Sylvia couldn't shake the feeling of adrenaline. "I'm going to make him pay for everything he's done." Her voice trembled with both fear and fierce determination, bolstered by her discoveries and the bond she shared with Mia. Sylvia stood at the threshold of a pivotal transformation. The anticipation twisted in her gut as she prepared for her next move. She needed to be careful, to be clever. Is this truly about justice, or is it vengeance? The thought flickered in her mind, a reminder that this journey had risks and consequences. The line blurred as she armed herself with knowledge, growing ever more empowered with each revelation. With the night still stretching out before her, Sylvia gathered all her courage, ready to confront the darkness hiding in Eric's world. The tension escalated as Sylvia sat across from Paul in the dimly lit corner of a downtown cafe, her eyes fixed on the scattered documents spread out between them. Each piece of paper held a weighty truth, another link in the chain of corruption that bound Eric to the suffering of so many. "Look at this," Sylvia said, her voice barely above a whisper as she pointed to the highlighted passages in a report. "Had been skimming funds from the charity he claims to support. It's all right here. Paul, former employee of Eric's company, leaned in closer, his brow furrowing. I always suspected something was off, he replied, his voice a mix of resignation and anger. But the depths of his greed, it's worse than I imagined. As they dug deeper into the revelations, Sylvia felt a surge of determination. She hadn't anticipated forming such a strong bond with Paul, the kind of bond forged in shared outrage and the flicker of hope that something could be done. This disgruntled employee, once a mere shadow of Eric's grand operation, now embodied the brave souls still crushed under the weight of privilege. My wife lost her job because of him, Paul admitted, his voice thick with emotion. We were doing fine until he pulled that last-minute contract. It feels so hopeless. Sylvia could see the pain etched on his face, the internal conflict playing out in his eyes. Here was a man who had watched his small world collapse under the very system Eric exploited for his gain. It was a stark reminder of what was at stake, not just for her, but for those like Paul, who had become collateral damage in the relentless game of wealth and power. That's why we have to do this, Sylvia said fiercely, the weight of her purpose solidifying her resolve. We can't let him continue to destroy lives without consequences. I'm going to expose him, and we're going to do it together. Paul nodded, ignited by her passion. All right, what's your plan? As they shared their ideas, Sylvia's intellect shone brightly. She meticulously crafted a scheme that would culminate at one of Eric's glitzy corporate events, an arena where the facade of wealth and superiority would meet the truth. The plan unfurled in her mind, each detail sharper than the last, a perfect dagger aimed at Eric's hypocrisy. The thrill of plotting justice coursed through her, compelling her forward. But with each calculated move, a flicker of doubt lingered inward. Sylvia's mind. Was she truly ready for this path? She couldn't shake the fear that revenge could morph into something darker, entangling her in a web that threatened her own safety and reputation. What if this backfires? Sylvia murmured, her brow furrowing as the weight of her intentions bore down on her. What if I'm not prepared for what comes next? Steeling herself against those fears, she recalled her motivation: justice for the voiceless, reclaiming her own dignity amidst the chaos he had caused. This is about more than revenge. It's about standing up for what's right, she reminded herself, his image fueling her fire. As the event approached, the stakes grew higher. Is this truly about justice? Or is it vengeance? She asked internally, grappling with her morality. Each time she rehearsed her speech, layers of anxiety coiled tighter within her. Yet the swelling purpose urged her forward. The night of the event was drawing closer, its significance looming large on the horizon. Sylvia checked her phone, her heart racing as she adjusted the presentation program one last time through stealthily obtained means. It felt surreal to operate in this shadowy realm, a place that belonged to Eric's stage, his audience. What if it all goes wrong? A hint of doubt gnawed at her, but she set her jaw, refusing to let fear take the reins. No turning back now, she whispered to herself, determination locking into place. As her phone buzzed again, Sylvia glanced at it, and her pulse quickened. The anticipation built as she took a deep breath, feeling both excitement and dread intermingling. She was ready to confront him on his turf, ready to expose the truths Eric had fought so hard to bury. Can our combined knowledge expose Eric before it's too late? She pondered, her mind swirling with possibilities, a shared mission gasping for realization. As the moment loomed, she felt ready at last, even if uncertainty hung like a shroud, whispering in the back of her mind. The atmosphere of the corporate gala pulsed with affluence, an intoxicating mix of laughter and clinking glasses echoing through the grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers hung like stars in the sky, illuminating the opulent decor crafted to showcase wealth and influence. As Sylvia moved through the throng of elegantly dressed guests, her heart raced with a blend of dread and fierce determination. Each step further into this world of privilege felt like stepping onto a tightrope, where the line between success and embarrassment was razor thin. She adjusted the hem of her high-end dress, attempting to absorb the glitzy facade that surrounded her. This was not the life that defined her, yet here she stood, blending seamlessly into the crowd, ready to unravel the very empire that had once taunted her existence. It was time for a reckoning. As she neared the presentation stage, the weight of her reckoning. As she neared the presentation stage, the mission bore down on her, each heartbeat echoing her resolve. This is it, she thought. My hour of redemption. Sylvia's focus sharpened, her thoughts narrowing down to the undercurrents of betrayal that had led her here. Invisibility was a strength she had cultivated, but now it was time for the world to see her not just as a waitress, but as a warrior in this battle against injustice. The lights overhead dimmed, pulling her attention to the focal point of the evening. With a deep breath, she accessed the multimedia system, her fingers gliding over the controls with practiced ease. As the first slide illuminated the screen, gasps rippled through the audience. The images and text she had painstakingly compiled reflected not only Eric's unethical business dealings, but also his personal scandals, laid bare for all to see. A hush fell over the crowd as Eric's face drained of color, turning from smug confidence to pale incredulity. Let them see, Sylvia thought, her pulse quickening as realization dawned on the onlookers. People who had once openly lauded him were now witnesses to his fall. The room transformed, a palpable sense of disbelief twisting the atmosphere. Sylvia observed the echoes of her planned reckoning, a shattering of pride that resonated with each revelation. I've started the fire, she reflected, as the billion-dollar image of Eric began to collapse under the weight of his exposed sins. It was a cathartic moment, and she could almost taste the bittersweet triumph in the air. But then, in the midst of her victory, Eric found his voice. You think exposing me will save you, Sylvia. You're just a pawn in a game far bigger than you know. His words dripped with condescension, aimed to redirect shame back onto her. Sylvia's body tensed, but she was ready. Perhaps, but it's a game that I refuse to be a victim of any longer. Her voice rang out, steady and loud enough for the murmurs of the murmurs of for the murmurs. Disbelief to cease momentarily. The crowd leaned in, their collective energy wrapping around her like armor. In that moment, Sylvia stood resolute, a stark contrast to the crumbling facade of Eric's empire before her. The audience was divided. Bewilderment shimmered across the faces of friends turned foes, their adoration for Eric dissipated in disbelief and disgust. It was a glorious rebellion, a mutual unveiling of truth that Sylvia had ignited. Yet, even as the room simmered with volatile emotions, a thread of uncertainty curled in her chest. As Eric retreated, humiliated, Sylvia felt every eye upon her. The stillness, thick with anticipation. Has it worked? Have I truly set things right? The weight of their gazes was heavy, filling her with both satisfaction and a gnawing uncertainty. This was a victory, but she sensed the battle was far from over. What consequences await me now? The warmth of triumph mingled with the chill of what lay ahead, leaving her on the precipice of something greater. The echo of the crowd still rang in her ears as the uncertainty loomed larger. How would Eric react to this newfound reality? What would be the outcome of her bold revelation? In the fraught silence that followed, she could feel the shadows of the night beginning to gather around her, hinting that this was only the beginning of a far more complex struggle. The din of chatter filled the cafe, but for Sylvia, the noise was little more than an echo against the backdrop of her triumph. Eric's degradation, public and undeniable, hung in the air like a gossamer thread, fraying with every passing moment. As initial waves of jubilation washed over her, she felt an unsettling tremor beneath her feet, hinting at the upheaval yet to come. "Sylvia," Mia greeted, her eyes dancing with relief. Can you believe it? We did it? We did it? Yeah, Sylvia replied, her voice catching somewhere between disbelief and elation. The weight of what they had achieved pressed upon her chest, almost suffocating. They settled into a booth, their eyes flickering to the window, where shadows loomed, carrying whispers of doubt and admiration. Mia leaned forward, a bright smile lighting her features. I mean, to see him brought down like that, it's like a dream. You and I took our power back. That's one way to look at it, Sylvia admitted, her brow furrowing as she remembered Eric's vulnerability that night. But it's not over. He won't go down quietly. A knot tightened in her stomach as the reality of potential retaliation seeped into her thoughts. Maya's expression softened, concern replacing her exhilaration. You're worried about the repercussions, aren't you? You're worried about the repercussions, aren't you? I can't shake the feeling that we've just opened a can of worms. Sylvia looked away, steeling herself against the tide of fear, threatening to wash over her. This is bigger than us. It's about everyone he's hurt. Right, Mia affirmed, but her voice was tinged with uncertainty. But we can't let fear paralyze us. We've made a stand. As they exchanged stories of how their lives had been shadowed by Eric's actions, Paul walked in, shattering the moment. The glimmer of his presence drew their eyes with a mix of anticipation and caution. He slid into the booth, casting a wary glance around. Hey, you two, he said, his tone laden with the intensity of urgent whispers. I've got new information about the fallout. Eric's empire is unraveling, but it's not just that. What do you mean? Sylvia leaned closer, her heart racing. Investigations are on the horizon. Eric's inner circle is starting to crumble under scrutiny. There's talk of misuse of funds and shady deals, all tied back to him. Paul's eyes flickered with a fervent spark. This isn't just your victory. It echoes through the whole system, a glimmer of hope intertwined with the swirling uncertainty in Sylvia's heart. So we could potentially bring down the whole network. Yes, but we're in dangerous waters, he cautioned, glancing with concern towards the side of the cafe. People like Eric don't just disappear quietly. They lash out. You need to be prepared for what's coming. Do you think we can get the information out before he retaliates? Sylvia's voice trembled between excitement and trepidation. The very thought of facing Eric again sent a shiver down her spine. Collective intelligence can dismantle what he built, but it requires us to be bold. Every piece we share adds strain to his foundation, Paul said, his tone shifting from excitement to urgency. But we must tread carefully. The more he feels cornered, the more desperate he becomes. As their conversation spiraled toward the complexities of their new reality, Sylvia's mind raced. The initial joy of victory felt heavy now, absorbing the unease looming ever closer. Would they become targets because of their actions? Celebrations soon turned awkward as other patrons began to steal glances their way, murmuring behind cupped hands. Sylvia felt their gazes like weight on her shoulders, half approval, half skepticism. Did they view her as a hero or a fool? The line appeared so blurred. There, amongst the mixed reactions, a rush of adrenaline surged through her. She was both vulnerable and empowered. Her journey had transformed her, yet the path ahead was still fraught with challenges. Just as she began to steel her resolve, an envelope slid silently onto the table, its edges crisp and unyielding. Sylvia's heart thudded in her chest as she reached for it, a gnawing feeling unfurling in her gut. The handwriting was unfamiliar, and a chill crawled up her spine as she cracked it open. The words inside were as enigmatic as they were foreboding. This was not merely a letter. It was a beckoning into a deeper layer of Eric's world, hinting at dark secrets that could change everything. What is it? Mia's inquisitive gaze bore into her. Silence enveloped the booth, filled only by the tension hanging in the air. Sylvia froze, her mind racing with possibilities, contemplating the intricate web left before her. It's something I didn't expect, more than I bargained for. The questions simmered on the edge of her thoughts. Daring to challenge a titan? As instructions danced on the page, she could feel the weight of her own choices, both exhilarating and terrifying, pulling her into depths unknown. Curiosity twisted like a knife in Sylvia's gut as she reread the anonymous letter. Its words hanging in the air like an unnerving ghost. What lay beneath the surface of Eric's empire? With every repetition, her obsession deepened, pulling her further away from the quiet life she had painstakingly built. The stakes were higher now. The exhilaration of uncovering secrets mingled with the sharp edge of fear. What if I get too close? She wondered, the question echoing in her mind. But the thought of stepping back felt like surrender. Flashes of her earlier days flooded her consciousness, fragments showcasing vulnerability painted in shades of despair. She recalled nights spent in dimly lit rooms, wondering where her next meal would come from, knowing that every decision had consequences tethered to survival. Those shadows contrasted starkly with the sense of power surging through her veins now, a power that felt fragile yet intoxicating. I can't let fear take over, she reminded herself, grappling with the balance between the courage she had found and trepidation that lingered like a specter at the edge of her resolve. As she contemplated her next move, a darker vignette unfolded beyond her own life. Eric's once polished facade was beginning to show cracks, raw paranoia gnawing at his peace. In the shadows of empty offices, whispers of social ostracism punctuated. The heir's former allies slinked away, eyes wide with discomfort. What happens when the tables turn? Eric mused bitterly to himself, irritation simmering beneath the surface. He scrutinized his reflections in the glass, each pang of frustration feeding his growing desperation. Their discontent stung more with each passing day, amplifying the realization that he was not the towering giant he once believed himself to be. Meanwhile, the repercussions of the recent public event rippled outward, reaching Mia and Paul, who found themselves grappling with newfound pressures. "This isn't just about us anymore," Mia murmured, her brow furrowing as she turned the words over in her mind. Paul nodded, his eyes clouded with worry. They sought to navigate their own lives while standing against a force as formidable as Eric. "We can't turn back. Not now," he replied, determination cracking through the tension in his voice, but doubt lingered beneath their bravado. Sylvia leaned into peril, each passing moment filled with a heady mixture of fear and determination, as she grasped the intel hidden behind the letter. "I have to be smart," she reminded herself, feeling the intensity of the world around her crackle with energy. Her thoughts spiraled around the heavy realization that exposing Eric's corruption could incite retaliation, not just toward her, but anyone willing to defy him. Just as she wrestled with this escalating tension, the door of the diner swung open, a rush of cold air signaling a significant shift. Everything narrowed down into a singular moment of sharp clarity when she saw the approaching figure. Sylvia's heart raced, pulse pounding in her ears. Recognition flared as she locked eyes with someone from Eric's past, a former ally, or perhaps a ghost of his former self. What are the odds? Sylvia thought, excitement and anxiety flooding her simultaneously. This chance encounter could rewrite everything she had been fighting for, but with it came a flicker of dread. Could this person offer the information she desperately needed, or would it spell her undoing? The air thickened with suspense as questions swirled in her mind. How deep did Eric's corruption run? Would she dare to expose herself to greater danger for the sake of justice and the hope of bringing accountability to the chaos around her? In that instant, everything hung in balance, and Sylvia prepared to embrace whatever revelations awaited her in this unexpected confrontation. A chance encounter that could rewrite everything unfolded as Sylvia stepped into the neon-lit diner, her pulse racing with an unpredictable mix of excitement and concern. The aroma of fries and grilled burgers filled the air, but it was the sight of a familiar face across the room that captured her attention. "Jake?" she whispered to herself, trying to recall the connection. He was a former employee at Eric's company, someone who had vanished from the scene after a series of unsettling rumors. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world outside faded away, leaving only the unanswered questions swirling between them. Was this a coincidence, or a chance to uncover more about the web of deceit she had barely begun to unravel? As she approached, Jake glanced over his shoulder, casting wary glances as though even the diner's walls were closing in on them. She couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation could be pivotal, igniting the passion for justice that had simmered in her chest since Eric's taunts. "Sylvia," he greeted, low and cautious. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same," she replied, trying to mask the intensity bubbling within her. "I need to know what really happened at your firm." He hesitated, his brow furrowing. "You don't understand. Eric isn't just a bad guy, there's a whole network built on his lies. And everyone, like me, who turned a blind eye is complicit." A chill ran down Sylvia's spine as she absorbed his words. There was a world beyond her individual struggles, filled with deeper conspiracies and ethical dilemmas, intertwined with Eric's influence. Everything was larger, more corrupt than she had imagined. She found herself captivated yet cautious. Engaging with this web of corruption could lead to her own unraveling. Inside, she wrestled between the instinct to protect herself and the burning desire for accountability. What if this was the moment that could finally tip the scales in her favor? The potential to bring Eric and his allies to justice felt colossal. Yet she recognized the risks. Pursuing this path could endanger not only her safety, but also those she cared about. Would she retreat into her shell of survival, or dare to unearth the truth? "Jake, if what you're saying is true, then there are so many lives affected," she breathed, urgency lacing her voice. "We can't let this go on." He nodded, the fear etched deep in his eyes. "But doing something about it means stepping into the lion's den. Eric won't take kindly to any threats against him." As the words hung in the air, Sylvia felt the weight of her decision. This moment could define her, could birth a path toward justice, or lead her into a trap. The thought of Eric's shadow looming over her, a specter of her past torment, fueled her resolve. "Then let's draw him out," she declared, her voice steady against the undercurrent of fear. "Let's take down the empire he's built. Together. With that an alliance sparked between them, ignited by the shared promise of revealing the truth and dismantling Eric's toxic legacy. They whispered over coffee cups and echoed fears, sowing the seeds of vengeance that both drove her and terrified her. As they planned their next steps, her heart raced. What lay ahead was uncertain, but she felt empowered, ready to step into this broader confrontation. But just as she felt the thrill of newfound purpose, the tension in the air thickened. Will she risk everything to unearth the truth, or will fear hold her back? Every heartbeat seemed to echo the question, reverberating through the diner as the stakes grew ever higher. The explosive encounter with Eric loomed on the horizon, intertwined with all those he had wronged, and Sylvia knew she had crossed a precipice from which there would be no return. The countdown began. As Sylvia stood at the precipice of her fate, the weight of her choices pressed heavily upon her. She reflected on the journey that had led her here, the moments of quiet desperation that had fueled her fire for revenge. A gust of wind rustled through the diner, capturing the raw energy of the moment. How would she respond now, as the scales of power began to tip? The thought echoed in her mind like a relentless drum. Every heartbeat ached with the provocative question, how would you respond if you faced a similar power imbalance in your life? It hung in the air, urging the audience to look into their hearts and recall their own encounters with injustice. In a world where the powerful often overstepped boundaries, each of them could foster a sense of empowerment. Sylvia took a deep breath, knowing that this was about more than just her fight. It beckoned all who listened to awaken their own courage against adversities that felt insurmountable. As she embraced her newfound strength, Sylvia's thoughts crystallized into clarity. Every act of courage can ignite a change in the world. For too long, she allowed the actions of the arrogant to shackle her spirit. Now, unleashed, she felt the weight lifting, as if the universe itself were cheering for her. The past had shaped her, but it would not define her. Just as she was stepping into her power, she urged the audience to consider their own potential to confront wrongs. Let us know in the comments if you believe Sylvia's revenge was justified, or if she crossed the line. Your thoughts matter. She imagined telling them, hoping to spark conversations that delved into the complex nature of justice versus revenge. She could see the dialogue growing, people sharing their experiences and perspectives, the ripple effects spreading far beyond herself. Sylvia's story became a beacon of what it meant to challenge societal norms. This was not merely a tale of retribution. It was about the empowerment of the marginalized, the strength found within communities that often felt voiceless. Her story shows us that confronting injustice can lead to a personal awakening, Sylvia thought, her heart racing with anticipation. What will your awakening be? She silently urged the audience. In that moment, the trajectory of her life shifted. There was so much at stake, and each of them held the key to their response to injustice. It was their story as much as it was hers. As the lights of the diner flickered, signaling the end of her tale, she felt a swell of gratitude. If you found strength in Sylvia's story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more empowering narratives that challenge the status quo. The words rolled off her tongue easily, a rallying cry for others to join the movement of resilience, courage, and change. Until next time, keep questioning authority and stay inspired to make a difference in your world. She envisioned leaving them with. Each heartbeat resonated with potential, each life an addressable act, waiting to ignite change.